Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, CEOs, and thought leaders about systematizing businesses. And this podcast is brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made management systems for businesses so they can grow and thrive. Lois, did you know that businesses need systems and processes in order to thrive?
Absolutely.
That's right. And that's what we do. So you can reach us at info@bizsuccesscg.com. All right, so let's get going with this episode. And this one is a really special one because I have a very special guest, Lois Weinblatt from the True North Visionaries. And I'm going to tell the audience how we met, etc. But first of all, I would like to hear from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the company.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so looking forward to being here with you and to just, sort of helping to connect the dots between this, what can feel like this very nebulous concept of vision and connecting it down to systems and processes and how we sort of bring those two together. So I started True North Visionaries over 7 years ago, and I work with visionary leaders and organizations all around the world to help them really gain clarity on the next chapter of what success looks like for them. So ultimately they can make better decisions faster, they can stop wasting time, and they can reclaim more of their energy and their time and really make sure that when they are investing money, that they aren't investing their money in places that aren't going to help them closer to their vision. They're really investing in their money and their resources and what is going to help them get closer to their vision.
That's great. And Lois, is really, you live what you basically live, but what you preach. I mean, I've seen it over and over, like how your vision becomes a reality because you envision it first and then you make it happen, which is amazing. And, you and I met about 4 or 5 years ago in a BNI convention in Anaheim in California. And so we start talking, and then we connected, we collaborate, etc. And I know you do a lot of speaking engagements or workshops for BNI. So definitely would like to give a shout out to BNI for connecting us. That's
absolutely
with the motto of BNI, givers gain, right? I mean, this is one of the best. That's one of the core values. So tell us. My first question is, tell us about a vision. What is a vision?
It's such a good question, and I think it's something that's really important for us to all sort of, again, take this idea of vision that can just seem like, oh, it's just something that, big corporates do, or something that's sort of a tick the box. Oh yeah, vision, mission, values. I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. To take that and turn it into something that can actually be valuable for our business. So typically when I ask a group of people, what's the first thing that you think of when I say the word vision? Some people will say, oh, goals or future or plan or strategy or all these different things, right? So again, there's so many different definitions out there. It's kind of hard to understand what this word actually means. But when I think about vision, I think of it really differently. And when I think about vision, in my mind, that means a definition of success at a specific point in the future. So there's two really sort of key elements. One is first that definition of success. So for a business, for a leader, for a team, what is their definition of success? Not their competitor's definition of success, right? Not everyone else's definition of success, but what's their definition of success? How are they going to know that they've gotten to where they wanted to go? And then the other critical part is that specific point in the future, because success looks really different for us at different stages of our business. Right. So it's not about just having one definition of success that is static throughout the life of our business. It's really about saying, okay, so for the next year or the next 3 years or the next 5 years, what's our definition of success 5 years from today or 3 years from today or 90 days from today? And once we have that clarity, then it really helps us understand, especially during uncertain times like now, it's not about trying to chase an old definition of success, maybe last year's definition of success. And it's not about trying to define what success is going to look like forever and always for our business, because that can feel really overwhelming. It's really about what is the next chapter for us in our business as a team, as an organization, and then what does success mean to us in that chapter. And so, especially now after COVID and not after COVID, but during this process, and now as we kind of start to reopen more and more and more, a lot of businesses are trying to, again, chase an old definition of success. And it's really more about recalibrating your definition of success as a leader with your team. Say, what does it actually mean to us now for this next chapter as we kind of continue to reopen and we move into this next phase?
Wow, that's great. So I know you work, as you mentioned, also with leaders all over the world, with CEOs and leaders all over the world. And walk us through your process in terms of creating that vision for the company.
So when I mentioned before that a lot of times when I ask people, what do you think of when I say the word vision? Again, a lot of people say future. So most people think, oh, okay, well, we're going to start talking about our vision. So let's sit down and let's talk about our future. But that's actually the very last piece of the visioning process. So before we can even begin to think about where you're headed as an organization or headed as an individual leader, we have to understand how you got to where you are. Then once we fully understand what that foundational kind of layer is, then we've got to, now this is a phrase one of my favorite visionaries coined, and now he knows that I steal it from him, but you have to gain a true lens on your current reality.
The true lens on your current reality. I like that. So that's like really looking at what is happening, what is the existing situation right now.
Exactly. Really
makes sense, because if you want to achieve it, you want to go to the top of the mountain, you need to see where the mountain starts. Where are you? Are you like 100 miles from the mountain? Are you at the base of the mountain, or you're not even in the same country as the mountain, right?
Exactly. And one of the analogies that I give to this is, when we get on our phone and we want to use Google Maps, even if you put in the exact destination, if you can't tell Google where you are now, it can't help you at all. Right? Before it can tell you how to get there, you have to put in two variables. You have to put in both where you're going and where you are now. And if you skip that, again, you're just kind of stuck. And so that's where a lot of business leaders do. They kind of skip that step. Okay, well, this is how we got here. Now, where are we going? But they don't really gain that true lens on our current reality. And so that's a really critical piece. Another piece of that is the true lens oftentimes means bringing more people in our organization into that process, into that conversation. So for instance, I work with one organization who, for the last 15 years, they always did their annual planning process where the two co-founders, went off site, had a few beers, had a conversation, sort of figured out the goals for the next year, brought it back to the leadership team. They talked about it some more, and then they rolled it out to the whole company. Well, when they decided to bring me in to work with them on their vision, we flipped that on its head. And it kind of freaked them out a little, but they were totally game for it. And we brought everyone into that first conversation. And so we brought so much more to the surface from people in their company that they had no idea that there was these perspectives and there's these thoughts. And this is the things that they thought were working that really weren't working, or the things that they were worried about that they actually didn't have to be worried about. So gaining that true lens on our current reality oftentimes, again, means that we have to bring in more people who have the kind of boots on the ground and the eyes at different parts of our organization than just the leaders have. So once we've figured out, okay, how did we get here? Where are we now? Then we've peeled back enough layers to really kind of start to explore where we're headed. And that's really about sort of understanding, distilling, crystallizing our non-negotiables for that specific point in the future. And really understanding, well, this is what we want, but maybe that's, we're really thinking about the next 3 years. And maybe that's more like a 5-year vision. So our non-negotiable isn't that. We have to realize that's more of a want than a need. But our absolute, no matter what, line in the sand things for 3 years from now, for us to feel like we are being the organization that we want to be 3 years from today, are X, Y, and Z. And again, getting everyone sort of in alignment around what those non-negotiables look like, and allowing the time and the space for really sometimes often very challenging conversations around that, because sometimes people have very different ideas. Even they go into the room thinking, oh, we're totally aligned. We all know this, we all know what we want. We're all going in the same direction. Oftentimes that conversation reveals that there's a lot more to be talked about before we reach alignment. Doesn't have to be consensus, but at least alignment.
For sure.
Then once we've really clarified where we're headed, now we're in a position to take all the ideas and really refine the vision, really refine that vision in a way we've articulated it clearly and we can share it. Now, we can go into a whole another piece on and what that looks like when you're sort of done with that finished product.
Well, I actually would love to hear about it. I would love to
Okay.
hear what is the tangible, what do they get? Like, your gut with, I mean, of course there is a lot, I mean, from what you're describing, and, I'm really big about vision as well, like envisioning and deciding what the future is going to be like and then working towards that. So I know that there is a lot of value in terms of getting excited about it and getting on the same purpose, everybody just working in the same, basically in the aligning, right? And going in the same direction. And again, it's like I use the analogy, which is, I know it can be a cliche, but it's the analogy of the mountain. Here's the top of the mountain and you want to get to the top of the mountain. So we all point to the same top and going there, that is tremendous. I work with a lot of organizations in terms of writing their systems and processes. And I know that, you cannot do systems and processes if you don't have a vision, a good vision for the organization where they're going, because otherwise it becomes an exercise in writing things as opposed to giving them the tools to actually arrive. It's basically giving them the ropes and the backpack and all the things that they need in order to actually climb to the top of the mountain. But again, we need to know where the top is.
Yes.
So there is a lot of value of doing that exercise, but how do we ensure, like, what do you get at the end? How do you ensure that everybody is aware of that vision?
Mm. And that's a critical piece that you mentioned, that there's actually awareness about the vision once you put all this work into creating it. And here's the other piece that I think is very different from how people often view vision, is that when I'm talking about vision, I'm not talking about a vision statement. That's not even like in my vocabulary, because in my mind, a vision, our definition of success at a specific point in the future, describing and articulating the evidence that we've gotten to where we wanted to go. There's no way we could put that in one sentence. So it's really a narrative, right? So most businesses that I work with, it ends up being, a few pages long, maybe 3 pages long. And it's a narrative. It's written in the present tense, like we are already there, again, a year from now or 3 years from now. And it's written like it has already happened. And it really, again, describes that evidence that we have gotten to where we wanted to go. What would we see? What would we hear? How would we know that we had gotten there? So it's not just telling, it's really kind of showing. But here's the difference. I've worked with some companies who said, oh, we've done that in the past. Like, we've done the narrative, we've made it, come alive on the page. But everyone in the organization reads it and it's like, well, okay, this sounds good, but where are the metrics? What are we actually going towards? I mean, the motivation can last about 24 hours after you roll it out at the company kickoff. And then, like, what is this actually doing? It's not actually helping us get anywhere. So yes, we want to paint the picture, but we want to make sure that that picture actually has those non-negotiables seated in the picture. We have to make sure that it's really describing the salient points of evidence that we've gotten to where we wanted to go, not just making it sound like, oh, it's the future and everything's great. End of vision, right? We have to really
totally. And I've read your narratives. I mean, you showed it to me and it's great. It's kind of like reading your story. It's reading the future, right? It's like, what the year is 2025 and this is the story of the company.
Yeah.
So it's definitely has tremendous value. But so you're saying about the non-negotiables and making sure that everybody knows it. So give an example of a company that you wrote their vision and what will be some of the non-negotiables. So our listeners really can understand the value of that vision and how does it translate into action.
Oh, I love that. Translate into action. Exactly. And that is what it is all about, right? We want our vision. If our vision is only there as something that kind of motivates and inspires, it's not enough, right? That is not enough to get us to take action. So once we have that vision in place, that narrative, then we can work backwards and create the plan to get there. And again, so much of that plan is based on how do we sort of arrive at these non-negotiables. So I'll give you a couple examples. One organization that I worked with, the first year we worked together, they had a 1-year vision, and then they were ready to kind of graduate, and they kind of got this concept, and they were like, okay, we're ready for a 3-year vision. And everyone in the organization was so excited to have this longer term vision to really latch onto and to be able to say, we aren't just thinking 12 months into the future. We're really thinking about where we're headed, kind of opens us up and unlocks us to think about a more creative way to get there and not just like, well, oh my gosh, it's already 11 and a half months till we're there. So, it's a very different approach. So in this current vision, they have a revenue target. And this is where the words are so important when it comes to vision, the actual words that we use. When we wrote sort of the first draft, it was about hitting a certain revenue target. And people on the company were like, And these were not VPs. These were, managers and people in the organization at different levels. And they were like, that's not super inspiring to me. But at the same time, we were very cognizant that we did not, and I always work with organizations on this, we didn't want to put in a number that felt so pie in the sky that it seemed like ridiculous in such a way that people would write it off and like, there's no way we're going to get there in 3 years. Come on. Then everyone kind of reads it and it becomes a joke. So we wanted to make sure that we were articulating this sense that we're not just hitting that revenue number, that we're significantly moving past it. But again, we didn't want to put this big sort of other metric on there that would feel out of reach, that would just sort of undermine the vision by feeling unrealistic. So we ended up switching it in the words now. So we blew past this number. And then it was like, ooh, and now literally, and I work with this leadership team on a weekly basis, and literally people will organically talk about, it's not me bringing it up, it's them saying, well, if we really want to blow past that number, this is what we need to do. And they use that language because it really shifts the way you think about things. If you're just getting to a certain metric or if you're blowing past it. Now you can blow past that by 1 million, you could blow past it by 10 million, right? That is sort of the intentional vagueness we put in there, but it has a very different sort of effect. Now, on another side of it is companies who talk about the culture that they really want to create. And again, for instance, this organization talked about really being intentional about cross-pollination. So interestingly, in their first vision, they had talked about cross-pollination, but then we realized we've got to be, especially when everyone now is remote, in the vision, we've got to say that we have been intentional. We can't just wait and say, okay, like we've set the stage now, where is the cross-pollination happening? We want to be proactive, intentional about creating the environments, encouraging those discussions, creating time and space for that to happen. And so now it's the same thing when they have their monthly monthly company meetings or company all hands. We talk about that. How do we make sure we're intentionally creating time and space for cross-pollination during this monthly meeting instead of using it as a bunch of updates that we could just email each other? So it drives on a very consistent basis, weekly, monthly, leadership team, entire company, how they make decisions, how they frame things so that it's always moving closer to the vision and supporting those different pieces of it.
That's great. That is fantastic. Great explanation. Now, here's a question. In terms of relooking at your vision, so you mentioned a 1 year, a 3 year, so meaning like, okay, so you set one for 1 year. Obviously, when you accomplish the goal, now it's time for a new game, a new vision, right? The next mountain to conquer. So then we're looking for the next one. When is it a good time, or what's the cadence or the rhythm in actually reviewing your vision? What do you recommend for companies? When should they actually have that vision review, or when is it time to know that it's time to change and look for a different vision?
So there's a few different aspects to that. One is that, and again, I'll share sort of the cadence that I use with the organization that I've been sort of mentioning and referencing, is that, we have the weekly leadership team meeting, and, the big company-wide goal that we're working on comes directly from the vision. It's something that is going to align and help us get closer to that vision. And that's what we're sort of working on a weekly basis. And with the decisions that we're making flow back to that, and they flow back to the ultimate vision. But again, it's sort of that tactical meeting of how we make it happen. Now, once a month, we have our vision session. So our monthly vision session, it's a little bit longer. And that's when we really take a step back and say, in the vision, we talk about this department really growing and evolving in this way. Let's take again a look at where we are now, where we want to be, and what are the building blocks to get there. So we really sort of on a monthly basis, take a step back, really think about some different elements of the vision from that bigger picture stance or from that higher level view, so that yes, we're working on the tactical pieces, working on that quarterly sort of milestone or benchmark on a very consistent weekly basis, but then we're always giving ourselves time to connect back to the vision in a bigger, more strategic way monthly. Now, every quarter, right, that's when we're sort of resetting our roadmap for the next 90 days. What are that next benchmark that's going to help us on the way towards our vision? And again, we've already mapped out sort of the milestones in the vision, and which milestones are our focus for year 1, which milestones are our focus for year 2, which ones are our focus for year 3. And that really helps us make sure that we're focused on the right work at the right time, because we don't want to be doing all the right work at the wrong time. And I'm sure you see this all the time with organizations jumping to say, hey, let's work on a system for this. And you're like, you have one person in that department. You have 8 people in this department, and they are screaming for systems. Let's do the right work at the right time. And then, yes, that's the right work for the other department that has one person, but it's not the right time. It's the right work, not the right time. So, and then what we do is, again, on that yearly basis, it's time for us to really think about, okay, so now this is the parts of the vision that have become a reality over the last year. Here are the parts that have not yet become a reality. What is that we continue to refine the milestones and what that looks like in this year? But very often we're going back with the leadership team. And again, it may be even at company all hands where we're having everybody look at that narrative and say, and highlight, in a Google Doc, highlight in green the sentences that you feel like are now reality, are true. You could read that sentence and have it be true. What are the sentences that you read it and you're like, we are so not there? And what are the sentences where you feel like, gosh, we kind of haven't talked about that in a while, or that's kind of drifted off our radar? Great. How do we bring it back on? So last year at their sort of end of year party, they projected an image of their vision, the narrative from the 1 year vision, and all of it, so much of it was highlighted in blue, meaning complete. And there was a few things that were, okay, yes, we're still working on it at the end of the year, we're wrapping this up, but that visual of saying, these were the sentences that we wrote. They weren't just meant to be motivational and inspirational. They're meant to actually have them become a reality. And here's how many we accomplished as a team. And that's a really powerful thing for us to see. But again, we need to keep a pulse on that. We, again, always have to have the true lens on our current reality. So if we look at it on a monthly basis or quarterly basis and realize we are really off track, that's great. That's great for us to know. Then we understand the root cause, we dig down to the root cause, and we work to get back on track.
That's great. Good explanation. So now let's talk about how the vision integrates with systems, with strategic plan, all the other aspects that we have to have, and the mission, and all the other aspects that exist in an organization. Because this podcast, again, is system simplified. So we're talking about systems and systematizing a business and having processes, having procedures. Let's really tie it in how a vision ties in with systems, and where does the strategic plan also aligns with everything here.
Yeah, and this is so critical because some people hear the word vision, I think, oh, woo woo. I just sort of think about the future, then it's supposed to magically appear in front of me, or I make a vision board and suddenly this is the company I have. And not to discount visioning or manifestation or any of those other things that can be really powerful. At the same time, we have to recognize that it is not just as if we write the vision and then we can let it gather dust, on our desks, or, just leave it with the leadership team and never actually roll it out to the whole company and expect things to happen magically. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a magic pill. We have got to create systems and structures we've got to get those things in place so that we can accelerate our results, right? We can make that accelerate our vision, get to those milestones. Again, it's not just a racing game. It's not just, we want to get to our vision faster than 3 years. It's not about that, but it is about the acceleration that happens when you really articulate what that future state looks like and then communicate it and build systems around it. So part of that process of working backwards from the vision is, again, okay, so now we know where we're headed. Let's work backwards, figure out how to get there. So again, right, we would never climb the mountain with just saying, all right, let's set out and climb a mountain, right? How can you even begin if you don't know which mountain you're climbing, right? That's the starting point for everything. So once we understand that, we work backwards and then we create the strategic plan. We have to understand that the plan is going to change time and again. We need to remain nimble and we need to remain flexible, but the destination remains the same. Right. A lot of times when companies get in trouble, in hot water, feel like they're being pulled in different directions, it's because their plan is always changing and their destination is always changing. And you just simply can't navigate that way. So when we have that clear destination that's not a moving target, then we can back into it and say, okay, well, if we want this sentence in the vision to become a reality, what systems do we need to support that? What's the current reality? Do we have any systems in place? Are they working? Are they not working? Are they actually getting us closer to or farther away from where we ultimately want to be? Are our systems set up to help us long-term or just short-term? Do we just have Band-Aid solutions in place everywhere? Right? Because that might be helpful for our current selves, but it's not helping our future selves, because we're going to end up having to take all those Band-Aids off and then put on a bunch more, and then that's never going to work. So really, again, understanding the current state of our systems is critical, and also recognizing where we don't have any systems at all, because you can't improve a system unless you have one to start. You can't improve something until you systematize it, right? Until you if everyone does something a different way, you can't improve it, because which one are you improving?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I agree. So you have to have the vision. So that's like the non-negotiable. So that's the mountain you're going to conquer. And then you have to have the strategy on how you're going to conquer that mountain. And then you have to have the systems in place, the processes, the procedures. So everyone, basically the business playbook. So people will know. The business playbook is really the way I look at it. When we write a business playbook, that's in the instruction manual on how to execute, how to achieve that vision, right? So we all agree on the vision. Now let's have an actual playbook that tells you how to achieve that vision. And we can take it into the sports analogy where you have that, you have the vision of where we're going to be as a team. How do we get there? That's when you have a strategy that's usually set up by the coach, and also the players are part of it. And then we have the playbook that gets us there. So that's the same in a business. It's all aligns, it's all together.
Exactly.
So amazing. So Lois, if people want to engage with you and work with you, obviously there are different sizes of companies, different entrepreneurs are listening to us right now. What are the different ways to engage and have businesses have you help them with creating a vision?
So the first piece is I offer, it's a free 1 hour visionary decision-making session. So it's really an opportunity for a leader who is facing a lot of big decisions. They might be purely professional. They might be professional and financial or personal, because they're all tied in together. An opportunity for a leader to just have that time with a neutral third party who is not their partner, who is not their business partner, who's not in their business, and to sit down and I take them through my methodology to really understand the variables at play. And we really help them by the end of that hour. I just help them really gain clarity on that decision, the biggest decision that they're facing right now, to help them reclaim again some of that time and energy and stop wasting time going in circles and rehashing the same decision again and again and again. So that's the first thing is that free session that any leader can take advantage of. I'm sort of doing it for a limited time at this point. But if people are interested in that, and I can give you the link if you want to, put it in the show notes or whatever. So that's the first step. And that's a really great way for people to sort of get an understanding of that visionary mindset and how do we take a visionary mindset and actually turn it into tools to give you clarity, help you stop wasting time, help you start making better decisions that align with where you ultimately want to go. And then I work with individual leaders. So I'll work with that leader who is saying, I've grown something incredible. Oftentimes their business is entering a new stage. Oftentimes they themselves and, their families are entering a new stage, new ages and new stages, and they're ready to kind of come up for air and just, again, recalibrate before they just dive into the next chapter of their success. What do I actually want this to look like? The last one I created, it was phenomenal and I just kind of did it. And now I don't want the next one just to happen. I want to make it happen and really be more intentional and proactive about how I want it to all look together. So I work with leaders individually. And then with organizations, oftentimes I'll start off by working with an organization who brings me in to do a session for their leadership team or a session for their whole team on sort of whether it's about tying vision to decision making or how vision ties into really aligning your team or just kind of visioning 101. I'll come in and get a sense of if they resonate, if everyone on the team really sort of gets what visioning is all about and sees how critical it could be in their business. And then if that is a really good fit, then we go on and we continue to think about, are they ready for a 1 year vision or a 3 year vision or a 5 year vision or whatever it is? And then we kick off that process with the organization and I continue to work with them on a longitudinal basis.
That's great. So if they want to contact you, what's the best way to contact you? Because it's going to be, for those of you that are viewing us, the website is right there under Lois' picture, and there is also going to be a link in the show notes. But let's say somebody is listening to us, how can they contact you?
So the best way is going to be to go straight to my website because my email address is a little bit long and it's on there. So if you go to the website, you'll be able to find it there. But it's just truenorthvisionaries.com. And if you go to the website, then you'll also be able to access. I have a resource called the Decision Makers Matrix, and that is designed especially for visionaries who have teams. And there's just so much on their plates and they always have that question, how do I actually prioritize? How do I not just spend my whole day reprioritizing my priorities? How do I get away from feeling like I have 10 number one priorities, right? So if that sounds like you, then you can find that resource at at True North Visionaries as well. And then I have a free private Facebook group called the Visionary Decision Maker. And you could, if you search the Visionary Decision Maker on Facebook, then you'll be able to find that. And I'm constantly, we're working on strategies and tools and visionary wisdom for other visionaries who've been through the process and are in the process of how it's really helping them and where they're hitting stumbling blocks and then how we can utilize their vision as a compass to guide them through and navigate through those challenges.
Sounds great. Okay, so I hope everyone just go to the True. So it's truenorthvisionaries.com.
Exactly.
Awesome. So in closing, I like to ask this question. What inspires you, or who inspires you?
My visionaries absolutely inspire me. For me, when I think about my driving purpose, it is to really help people create their future, right? And I do that not just to propel visionaries, but their families forward, right? But generations forward. A true visionary is somebody who wants to gain that clarity and reclaim time and energy, not just for themselves, because they know that's going to impact their generations and generations to come, whether that's actually their kids or whether it's just the other people in their world that they connect with, and how that's going to really impact everyone else. And that's something, clarity really unlocks for people. It's just amazing to see what happens in people's marriages and with their children and with their employees and their leadership teams when they have that clarity and that self-awareness for themselves, and then how that radiates out into their lives.
Excellent. All right, Lois, well, it was great having you on the podcast. Thank you so much.
It was excellent being with you here today. I love the questions, and I am the biggest proponent. The Toyota Way to Continuous Improvement is like my favorite book. So I am all about systems and processes. I'm so glad that your clients have you as a resource, because it's critical, again, to, yes, we can have a vision, we can have a strategy, but we don't have the systems and processes to implement and really institutionalize that, we're not going to get very far.
Very well said. Well, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.